It was on April 28, 1987, that Arthur Shawcross walked out of Attica Prison in Upper New York State, released on parole. He was a few weeks short of his 42nd birthday, prematurely aged, pot-bellied and gray-haired, looking some 20 years older than his true age after serving nearly 15 years of a 25-year sentence. He didn't appear a threat to anyone, yet he was a convicted killer, and there was one desire that dominated his thinking: to kill again. Like many other serial murderers, Shawcross claimed that it was his domineering mother, whom he could never please, who ruined his childhood. He was born in Portsmouth, New Hampshire on June 6, 1945, and was the eldest of the family. He grew up near Brownville, outside Watertown, New York. At school, he was known as Oddie and had no friends, and even in his teens, he was still wetting his bed. In 1964, Shawcross married for the first time, but the marriage lasted only 2 years, and he had already been on probation twice for burglary and assault. He was then drafted and served a spell in Vietnam before returning in September 1968. His second marriage was no more successful than the first, and when his wife left him, he lost control, later claiming to have been badly affected by his war experiences. He began to drink heavily, started fires, and stole from a local gas station. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Released at the end of his sentence, Shawcross settled in Watertown and married for the third time on April 22, 1972. Just 2 weeks later, on May 7th, 10-year-old Jack Blake went missing from his home late in the evening. His mother worried whether he had gone fishing, perhaps with the creepy man he sometimes sold bait to, a man named Art. By midnight, there was still no sign of Jack, and his younger brother volunteered the information that Art lived in Cloverdale Apartments, a low-rent housing project. Mrs. Blake contacted the police and went with an officer to knock at the door of the Shawcross apartment. When he opened the door, she asked Shawcross. Shawcross said that he had seen the boy playing earlier in the day, but had not seen him since. The police showed little interest and listed the boy as a runaway. Frantically, Mrs. Blake organized search parties of family and friends, but months went by without any news. On September 2, 1972, Stan Fisher drove his friend Helene Hill and her 2 daughters, Karen, 8, and Chrissy, 3, to spend the Labor Day weekend with some of Helene's relatives in Watertown. Late in the afternoon, Karen went missing, and her mother reported it to the police. They found a passerby who claimed he had seen a little blonde-haired girl climbing over a fence by the iron bridge that crossed the Black River. Searching under the bridge, the police found Karen's body, face down in the mud and half covered with paving slabs. Her blood-stained shorts and panties were found nearby. So, at the autopsy, it was established that Karen had been raped and strangled, probably with her own clothing. When Mrs. Blake heard of the crime, she immediately called the police and suggested that they should question Art Shawcross. He had previously been in trouble for child molestation, so they brought him in. At first, he claimed to have an alibi, but some girls described a man they had seen climbing back over the fence by the bridge, wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and sandals, and a nearby bicycle carrying fishing rods. Clothes answering the description were found in a laundry basket at Cloverdale. After an all-night interrogation by detectives, Shawcross finally whispered, "I must have done it, but I don't actually recall doing it." Hearing a news report on the radio, a motel clerk remembered seeing a man stumbling out of Woodland to the east of Watertown some months before, perhaps early May, around the time of Jack Blake's disappearance. Luckily, he also remembered the man's name, Art Shawcross. Searchers were sent at once to the woods, and on September 6th they found a child's naked corpse buried in a shallow grave. Scattered in the undergrowth were the clothes that Mrs. Blake had described Jack wearing. The body was too far decomposed for the cause of death to be determined, and failure to establish the time of Karen Hill's death, or to blood type the semen found in her body, made the case against Shawcross difficult to prove. The DA's office therefore cut a plea bargain. In exchange for his confession, the murder charges against Shawcross were reduced to manslaughter, and so he was sentenced to only 25 years, rather than the life imprisonment he would have faced for murder. By 1987, Shawcross succeeded in convincing the parole board that he was a reformed character. He had been corresponding for many years with Rose Marie Wally, a nursing aide, and on his release, he met her for the first time, and they made plans to get married. They set up home in Rochester, some 90 miles southwest of Watertown, and Shawcross was thought to be kind and considerate by his new neighbors, although he could sometimes appear cold and distant. Rose found she was living with an unpredictable man. After his years in prison, he was obsessively tidy and would lose his temper and smash things if everything was not to his liking, and sometimes he would stay out all night. Nevertheless, they were married in August 1989. Beginning in October of that year, a succession of bodies began to turn up, many in or close to the gorge of the Genesee River, on which Rochester stands. On October 21st, fishermen found a bunch of bones in clothes. It was the remains of a woman aged between 35 and 45, with her jeans unzipped and pulled down, but no ID was found, and her head was missing. 6 days later, the body of known prostitute Patricia Ives was found on waste ground behind the local YMCA. On November 5th, another prostitute, Maria Welch, disappeared, and on November 10th, the asphyxiated corpse of 22-year-old Frances Brown, a 22-year-old high school dropout and heroin addict, was discovered near the Genesee. Panic began to spread in the city's red light district. The police, realizing that a serial killer was at work, mounted heavy surveillance in the quarter, noting the license plates of every car that stopped in the area, but they obtained far too much information to deal with, and many of the prostitutes went into hiding, complaining that the police presence was driving their customers away. On Thanksgiving Day, June Stott's body was discovered, wrapped in a rug near the mouth of the Genesee, where it flows into Lake Ontario. She had been mutilated, and part of her genitals had been cut away. 4 days later, another prostitute, Elizabeth Gibson, joined the killer's score. In the weeks before Christmas, 3 more prostitutes disappeared. One, June Cicero, had been talking to police only minutes before she was picked up by the killer. On New Year's Eve, a pair of jeans was found containing the ID of another of the missing women, Felicia Stevens. State troopers launched an aerial search by helicopter and on January 3, 1990, spotted a corpse lying in the snow beside a creek. Standing close by was a man who appeared to be urinating. The helicopter followed as the man drove away in his car, and ground patrols were alerted. The body was identified as that of June Cicero, naked except for a pair of socks and a sweater. Her face was frozen to the snow and her genitals had been excised. Arthur Shawcross was found in the kitchen of a nursing home where a woman friend worked and was arrested by the state police. His interrogation was complicated by disputes between Rochester PD and the state police as to who should interview him, but eventually, asked about Elizabeth Gibson, he said baldly, "I killed her." He then went on to confess to at least 8, probably 11 murders, providing intimate details of each one. When Shawcross came to trial, the only question that remained to be resolved was whether or not he was insane. In due course, the jury found him sane, and he was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences, 125 years in total, without chance of parole.